I mean, there's nothing better than watching Nate Diaz and Nick and Nate both. But Nate's been fighting more frequently recently. So there's nothing. I mean, talk about just a good quality fight to watch. And at any point in his career, you're always going to find something that it's worth watching.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. I'm really excited for Nate's next fight against Leon Edwards. Were you kind of surprised that he got like Leon Edwards is like a top contender right off the bat? Were you kind of surprised with that matchmaking, or like, what's your opinion on all of that?
My opinion on the I guess, I mean, it's true Diaz form, never back down.
Yeah.
You I guess a lot of people don't want to fight that guy, and Nate's like, well, I'll fight him. I don't care.
Yeah, and a 5-round co-main event too. I mean, that's just like that's making history right there.
Yeah, first time ever, huh? Nate does what Nate wants.
Yeah, for sure, man. And just going to you, how's your 2021 been so far?
I guess a lot of people don't care about this, and that's the thing. It's just like we must be in a real lull of combat, or not even just in sports in general. If this is all we're talking about this weekend, and that's listen. That's no. Uh, I wish maybe Askren was a little bit more equipped for the opportunity, and he wouldn't. It's gonna make Jake look good. That's for sure.
hmm And with Ben Askren, a lot of people are saying that he's a representative going into boxing. Um, who would, if you had to pick Jake Paul's next opponent, like inside the boxing ring, who would you bring in from MMA?
Well, you do know the reason why he's in boxing, right?
Just because he got his ass kicked by you in MMA, so I would assume that, right?
As soon as I mean, and that's got to be really demoralizing for anybody. Take me out of the picture. If the guy's 40 pounds less than you, much shorter, and just has his way with you in the cage, and he had hope in him. He had this idea in his head that he thought that he could actually. There was a glimmer of hope in the kid that he thought that he would actually win, and that has to be really demoralizing when a guy half your size just destroys you. So he looked at that and was like, maybe it will take me a little bit longer to find some success in MMA. I better stick with boxing because listen, I was telling my friend over here. He's like, I'm like my 12-year-old niece could spend 6 months in a boxing gym and navigate through it and figure her way around it. And and I say that with obviously yielding to the caliber, but his last fight was against an NBA player. they're not going to have the they're not going to have the same wherewithal as a Floyd or a Canelo Alvarez or you know some of the boxing greats that know just the fine edge of boxing and can really play with it. But he's going against a guy that you know, probably in the history of mixed martial arts is the worst striker, like bar none. Like, I mean, that's
hmm
that's not that's no surprise. No, I don't. I don't know anybody that would argue that otherwise. Like they would be like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, you're probably right. He's not, he's not known for his striking abilities, and not even just that. He's very slow and lethargic in his approach. He has a very grappling focused game, and that's because he spent years being an Olympian, a wrestler, and college wrestler, and which he didn't even have. He's not even known as like the a traditional style of wrestling. That's how he adopted the name funky in wrestling. He was unorthodox. He had a completely different approach to his style of wrestling. So you don't even see that same like, you know, uh, you know, bull-nosed wrestler approach with Askren. It's more of that, sandals in the jeans and Shaka vibes. Um, and that's cool. I just, this is not gonna convince me. It's not going to help me. See Jake as a legitimate boxer. I think if he really wants to take himself seriously, he needs to overcome the fear of fighting fighting his dad. I'm his daddy. I'm his daddy in fighting, and he knows it. That's why he's running away from it. He actually even come to find out he deleted the video
Oh
blog,
yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like
which
number
tells
one
me
on
that I
trending right
won.
now.
What?
It's like number one on trending right now on YouTube.
He deleted it.
Oh, somebody else posted it, and then it got like number one on trending on YouTube right now. So that's crazy. I was watching it earlier today.
I need to capitalize on this algorithm. I have all the footage. I never did anything with it because I was just like, all right, whatever. It's a little vlogger. His mom pleaded with me, please don't hurt him, please. And he brought his dad there, his friends, and I just saw a kid that wanted to get into it, and that was cool to me. I spent a lot of time. I used to live in Hollywood over at the Vine building where all the Vine famous stars are, like King Batch, Amanda Cerny, Logan was there. I was really sort of introduced to the whole algorithmic world in social media realms, and they do it better than anybody. And he's doing that right now. He's managed to get a lot of people in the world to believe. Sorry, I'm in Santa Monica.
It's all right, man.
In clubhouse terms, we call this a room reset. He what was I saying?
You were just saying, with the algorithm, and then just leaping
Right.
into
He
that
has
world, I guess.
managed to convince a lot of people that he is a fighter, which that's either a testament to his marketing abilities or our inability to clearly communicate what real fighting is.
Yeah. I think if we throw him in there with like a Francis Ngannou, I think it will just, that's what needs to happen. I think Bisping was in talks, which I think Bisping, that would have been a very bad fight if Bisping went in there instead of Askren.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, of course. He's smart to pick the worst guy on the roster. That's for sure, for certain. And I'm not saying that because Askren's not a boxer. He's not a striker at all. His approach to fighting is get the guy to the ground as quickly as he possibly can, so that he can either find his, some sort of submission. He doesn't even understand jiu-jitsu to the point where he knows what he's doing, but it's just to kind of do the wrestler's approach of get in, lay, and pray. And I think that was maybe some foresight on Jake, but at the same time he's just posing. This fight offers me no interest to saying like, oh, I really want to see what's going to play out between the old washed up wrestler and the young YouTuber that wants to tick his hand in boxing. Like, I don't care. But you know what? Hey, if you take a guy that has already, beat the guy up, and now the kid wants to kind of, overcome that adversity, and whether it's not about winning or losing in a boxing fight against me. It's about him. It's about him, being willing to face that fear that he has. He's got a fear. He's so much of a fear. He's deleted the video on YouTube. I mean, I have almost so many videos on my YouTube channel that I don't care. I mean, I look at them sometimes like, what the hell was I thinking? But I keep them up because I don't care. Results wise, I even talked about like one of the matches I lost in jiu-jitsu. I vlogged the whole tournament and lost the match, and I kept it up. I don't care. It's about it's about resonating with the people. And I think that right now he's more leaning towards, you know, me. Look what I can do. This, and this, and you know, that's just youth. That'll work itself out over time.
Mm-hmm. And then, you know, I wanted to ask you. He sparred Bellator veteran Anthony Pretty Boy Taylor, and then you know, there's Anthony saying that you know he beat him up in sparring. Jake Paul saying that you know he absolutely like it was like a landslide of a sparring match, and then it's weird too because they said no cameras allowed, even though Jake Paul says that they have the tape. So like I know that
we saw this
oh
same. He's playing a playbook. It's a playbook. We saw this same thing with Connor and
Paulie.
who is it?
Paulie
Yeah.
Malignaggi, yeah.
Yeah, same story. I've seen this movie before. I don't care.
Gotcha, man. And you know, going into your last submission win, you put like a patent on the Agazarm submission. I know AJ McKee had his like own. He had the McKeel team, so like I wanted to get your thoughts on AJ McKee's McKeel team over Darian Caldwell.
Well, the thing with Darian is that he did that to himself. He put himself there. He was an idiot. He just didn't. He didn't know what he was doing, and the other guy was just like, oh, okay, well, I'll try to crank your neck, and you know, homeboy's got a weak neck, and it you know, it caught the best of him. It happens though. I think for me, I was more, you know, in jiu-jitsu you sort of see the same stuff over and over again, and then when the guys like do their own unique stuff, it's kind of like, oh cool, what was that? But it always comes, it's a circle, right? Stuff makes itself known right now, and then you know, then there's a you know, a trend that comes in and everybody's focused on this, and then it comes back to the other thing. I personally, you know, as just being in jiu-jitsu for as long as I have been, I would much rather see jiu-jitsu practitioners and grapplers in general be more focused on the standing side of it, as opposed to just the all parterre. But I did see that submission. It was just an error on Darian's part. So it's tough for me to say, oh, that was a phenomenal submission. No, it was not. It was just capitalizing on a poor judgment from another fighter into a neck crank. I mean, as far, do you know, it wasn't really a choke, was it? It was just a crank, right?
It was like it was like a crank because it looked like it was a guillotine for a second, and then he got the arm in. It was definitely something weird, but yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that one.
Yeah. Well, we got one agreement. We can tally it up. You and I.
Gotcha, man.
What are we disagreeing on?
I don't think about anything. I tend to stay neutral in interviews, but honestly, like all of what you're saying is basically factual. So yeah, I agree with you.
Let's see if we can find anything we disagree on. Who do you think is going to win this big boxing match that everybody's talking about? What's your take?
Oh man, hey, double knockout. I think that's a pretty solid prediction. Would you agree with me on that one?
Yeah. Listen, he's just the guy that you saying that he was fighting, like, who knows, you know, who knows what happened behind closed doors, no cameras, this, that, and the other, whatever. But you couldn't have picked a better opponent than in Ben Askren for a guy that has no credentials in boxing and wants to appear as a legitimate boxer, right? Everybody who thinks of Ben Askren thinks of him as this wonderful UFC fighter. Well, he's only had 3 fights in the UFC, one of which is the fastest knocked out fighter in the history of the UFC. I think even just in general, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
one of.
Right, and the only fight that he kind of like, it really wasn't even a win. He was getting destroyed by Lawler. So it's tough for me to consider him a UFC fighter. I mean, and he did a wonderful job at kind of preserving his record up until the point to get him to warrant that the leverage that he had with the UFC to get those 3 fights, those high profile fights. Those are high paying, high profile fights that he, you know, finagled his whole career into getting to that point, and that's sort of what Jake's doing. I'm more on the Diaz approach, which is anytime, anywhere. I don't care. I'm not trying to be undefeated. I'm trying to be the best, and that I'm not cherry picking anything. I'm certainly not trying to contour the algorithm so that people think that it's something bigger than what it really is. It's you just look at like I said, look at Askren's approach to the fight. He does not care. This is a means for him to get his NFT and his BitCloud up. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think Ariel said it himself, where it's like these fight. I saw with Frank Mir too. They have so much partnerships going on with them this fight. Where it's the money. I mean, I think it's like 500, half a million for Ben Askren just, and that's outside of partnerships and sponsorships. But it's definitely a money grab at this point.
Right, it's a cash grab. That's nearly entire, but it's a cash grab for Askren. You could say it's a cash grab for uh, for the kid, but he just takes himself way too seriously for it to be a cash grab. Like there's part of him that's like taking the weigh-ins very serious, taking the lead up, and like you know all of the comments and the pictures and this, that, and the other. Like he legitimately thinks that he's a boxer, and it's like you're not.
Yeah. And, with that, too, I know it's boxing rules, but Ben Askren said in an interview, like, I think yesterday, that he wouldn't mind going for a double leg. Do you agree? Do you think Ben Askren's going to shoot for a double leg in this one?
You know what? Honestly, what would make this more entertaining is if it turned into like a WWE style event. Like
Just
maybe
like with the
like
chair and everything?
yeah, you know what? You know who's gonna bring the chair? Snoop Dogg coming in with the chair from the top of the ropes.
If
It's like,
if you were at the go on.
no, go ahead.
Oh, like if you were at the fights, like what weapon would you choose? Like, would you if you were at the arena tomorrow, like would you get the chair? Like, would you like just jump in there? Like, where would you be in all of this?
Yeah, apparently just my presence alone scares Jake, so I would just need to sit there. I wouldn't need a chair. I would just hi Jake, how are you, fella?
Hmm. I saw Jake. He put some shots out. I think it was like a year ago, but of a sparring session with you and him. Boxing gloves, not MMA.
Right.
What did you think of that footage when it surfaced?
Well, I mean, first off, I knew it existed because I was there. I'm the one that said, hey, you can film this. This is for your benefit. This is for
Hmm.
you to have some tape to draw on. The kid didn't even know how to throw a punch. His boxing coach Milton said to me, he's like, listen, if you can take, and you know me, I can take a few hits, especially from a kid who's got pillow for hands and can't really, was just figuring out how to punch at that time. It was just like, it was me talking to him saying, all right, yeah, go ahead, go again, hit me again. And if you look at the fighting, like you'll see it. It's just like I take a couple and come back. I'm like, all right, kid, go again. And it wasn't, the idea was not for me to have, to go in there and box the kid and give him a feel for that. It was for the kid to feel what reactions, and when he throws a punch, what happens, and work through that. And I thought that was sort of, I mean, it's unbecoming of anybody to do that, but the kid doesn't, his he he has too much of an ego. He hasn't spent enough time in fighting to understand why that's not good, like why you shouldn't do that, right? He's using that as an object of ridicule to put himself over at the expense of somebody that spent their own time, money, and resources to help him. And that was his
Hmm.
way of like, like, see what this doesn't matter. And then I was like, it's gonna catch up to you, kid. Sooner. It's You there?
Yeah.
Kept getting a phone call. I said it's gonna catch up to you, and it will. It will catch up to him. It may not happen right away. It may take a little bit, but eventually it runs its course. You can't. I also know that he was training with Sugar Shane Mosley for a little bit, which, in terms of like boxing credentials, you can't like that's one of the best ever to be able to train and learn under the tutelage of someone our one of the greats of of boxing. And same thing, he burned that bridge. I don't know the details of it, but I know it's no longer happening, and I could only imagine. And just like, so I'm sure he messed up somewhere. And even if you look at that, like, if he wants to say like, oh yeah, you beat my ass in MMA, and then I handed it to you in our boxing sparring. Well, Okay, well then, to his rhetoric of him being so much of a better fighter since that he's focused on boxing since then, right? That's what he's saying. He's like, oh, I'm a much better fighter. I will put his hodgepodge of training regimen that he's done over the last couple of years against my 2-3 years of dedicated sparring and boxing training under Richard Perez and the Diaz brothers. Like, on top of the already, on top of an already, call it what you want. You guess you could just very be modest and say understanding of combat martial arts that I've had before that. Like, then parlaying that into I spent 2 years just solely focusing on my striking with the illustrious Diaz brothers, like arguably the best, if not the best strikers in MMA, right? And especially Richard Perez, one of the best boxing coaches alive. So if that's his gauge of deciding whether he can or cannot hang with me, or he would destroy me, he's taking his training over the last couple of years and putting it against my training over the last couple of years, right? I'll bet on Diaz brothers all day long.
Gotcha, man. Gotcha.
There's something about the Mexican style that just you can't. It's too good.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. As a Mexican, I would definitely have to agree with you on that. So I think we're 2 for 2, right?
Two.
And I'm interested in seeing your return to MMA. I saw some stuff a couple months ago. Were you released from Bellator?
And so much so that whenever I train, I listen to Latin music. Like, that's my go-to. Like, I put on Pandora. Even in my physical therapy today, I did shadow boxing and bag drills. I told them, I'm like, Hector Lavoe, you gotta put on Hector Lavoe Pandora. And they're like, what's that? And I'm like, you don't know who Hector Lavoe is? Only one of the greatest ever, right? But it's the salsa dancing, it's tacos, it's the culture of there's a lot of deep rooted self respect in the Mexican culture, and you don't really understand that until you spend time around a good Mexican cultured family. I've been fortunate to be introduced to a lot of even in jiu-jitsu it's more of like the Brazilian culture, but the Latin culture in general, I think there's a lot of respect that's embedded in the community and the culture of Mexico, of the Latin culture, and it thrives in the boxing world. It really makes up boxing, right? Look at you know I don't have to tell you. But the thing is that as him, an American kid that's sort of fighting for views and fighting for recognition to and kind of trying to find the cheat in the shortcut of way of things, he could learn from the more of the Mexican culture, which is good old hard work and time and it there's a bit of a rhythm and a cadence to it. I don't know if you know how much you're into salsa dancing, but I love it. I fucking love it. I love it so much so I'll do it. Back when I was living in Hollywood, this gal Gabby Lopez. I'll have to post her on my Instagram. You guys can see her. She's just not only is she drop dead gorgeous, but her her approach to salsa dancing it taught me a lot about footwork. It taught me a lot about rhythm. It taught me a lot about cadence and just even the approach. Even if you look at salsa dancing as like holding the exchange and energies between the male and the female in the dance, right? And how the man has to lead it and sort of just kind of give way for the female to do what she does and how she dances. I'm getting off topic. My point in saying that is that he's an American kid that grew up in America in the social media generation, where he's just constantly worried about things that he shouldn't be worrying about, and he's making it all about himself. And even if you listen to some of his interviews, it's always me this, me that, I did this, I did that. People don't, people take for granted I did this and I did that. I'm like, I don't care. Even like my physical therapy that I'm doing today, and like people are like, oh, you're making great strides. I'm like, listen, I couldn't do any of this without my physical therapist. I couldn't do anything without the tech, the techs that help and bring the ice and bring the heat, and even when I'm fighting, I'm like, listen, this show is nothing without everyone. Yeah, the fighting, they bring it, but it's you know A quarterback is only as good as his line. You can't. I think he's so. People give me shit. Like Jake Shields gave me shit for it. He's like, he didn't beat his ass enough. I should have beat his ass a little bit more. Maybe he would have a little bit more self-respect and respect that time in martial arts teaches you. And I think that my approach, just seeing my approach, my approach to martial arts, I think it's a lot of it's widely influenced from the Mexican Latin culture, which is you take your time. You gotta put in the work, put in the effort, and that there are no shortcuts. He's finding all the shortcuts he possibly can right now, and it's working for him right now. But eventually it'll catch up, and I hate to be the one that I'll have to say, like, listen, kid, I told you so. I beat myself up because maybe I didn't do what I was supposed to do, and his mom, his mom looked at me and she gave me these big old like eyes, and she looked at me. She's like, "Please don't hurt my son, please." I'm like, no, listen. I come from a jiu-jitsu background. I'm taught to just really subdue somebody with little to no damage to myself and the other person. So I took the jiu-jitsu approach with Jake. When I was mounted on top of him and he was wincing and struggling for his life, I could have dropped an elbow on him from 12 o'clock and split him open, or really kind of brought some fear into his life right away. But I tried to show the kid a different side, and I think that's kind of why he's running off in the tangents that he's running off, with little to no regards to the people that have not only have helped him get to where he is right now, but into where he wants to go. He's not going to get very far if he continues down this road. And the only way out of it that I see is he needs to, it's kind of like Star Wars. He's got to answer the call. He's got to face his dad, and he's got to do a boxing match with me, or at the very least can follow up on his promise that he gave me, which I said to him. I said before, I was like, listen, I don't care about money. I don't care about you pumping me in my social media. I'm like, what I do care about is my art and the time that I spend in my martial arts. So I said, listen, there was no chance he was gonna, but I said, if you win, I gave him an incentive. I was like, listen, if you win any UFC fight you want to go to, you got 4 floor tickets. That's on me. I said, that's on me. You get. And he was like, oh hell yeah, I'd love to go to UFC. Always wanted to. He was like a big fan. I'm like, but if I win, you got to learn jiu-jitsu.
And he never did.
And he never did. And look where we're at now. So I think that for me, it would be about doing the boxing fight with him so that he could come back and say, okay, I need to imagine the picture afterwards with him in his gi with his white belt on.
That'd be hilarious.
In Mexico.
Even better, man. Even better.
With Hector Lavoe playing.
Is it safe to say that you're gonna play some of that music next time you walk out to the cage?
I think the next fight's gonna probably be a DMX song.
Oh yeah, obviously, yeah. DMX is the go-to song right now.
Yeah, and that's just pay tributes. Hey, I watched a lot of Tyson fights. I watched a lot of fights with fighters walking out, and that was the energy, right? The feeling of it, and it's important for people to remember that, right? I said we stand on the shoulders of giants. It's true. I would not be where I'm at if the people that were before me did all the work that they got to get there, right? And he's gonna learn that one way or the other. Sure, you can't cheat it. You can't fake it. You can initially, but eventually it catches up. You look at his brother. His brother knows that. His brother. The cool thing about his brother is he kind of checked him like that. He started popping off about Nate, and Logan. Logan told me, he's like, I had to tell him, he's like, you understand who you're talking to? Like, he will kill you. And he will. But it's just like, I can't save you, kid. You're going to be running your mouth and saying all this, and even saying it about me. Like, now, next time I see you, it's not going to be, hey, buddy, how you doing? It's going to be, come here, kid. Bah. We can make it professional if you want to make it professional, but you already crossed that line. You already went down that road, and now you got to pay for it. So, he he's so embarrassed about what happened, so much so that he had to delete the content. And listen, I get it. I'd be embarrassed too if a guy half my size destroyed me and I had no idea of what fighting was before that. But that's an opportunity for him to, humble himself and, maybe reconsider his approach to the game without, shitting on everybody in the process. He's burning a lot of bridges.
Mm-hmm. For sure,
His
man. For
brother's
sure.
smart. His brother's smarter because his brother did the boxing fight with the KSI guy or whatever, and it was like visually, he knew he's like, I'm not the best boxer, but I'm doing this fight to represent my fight back to where I wanted to be with with his world. And I thought that was cool because it's like he ain't trying to pose. He's staying in his lane. He ain't trying to be known as the fighter, the best fighter. He was just using the boxing fight as a means to kind of get over the hump in his own life, and it helped give him the momentum. Look at his podcast. I mean, I've listened a couple times. He holds a good podcast. His
Oh
content has
yeah,
been
for
better.
sure.
His content has been better online since that, his Forest days. I'll say that.
And he's chill with Ben Askren too. I was surprised on how chill he was with a guy that was fighting his brother.
Right. Yeah.
For sure.
Exactly. I think he can
Would
learn a
you
lot
ever
from his older brother.
would you ever go on the Logan Paul's podcast just to talk about the whole thing of Jake?
I don't think Logan would ever. He would probably protect his brother in that case because I mean, but I know Logan. I've been in Logan's house. I've helped Logan. I've helped Logan for his fights. I've sparred with Logan. I never get a call from either one of them. And I'm like, you guys are gonna catch up.
Mm-hmm. And just going into your return to MMA, when do you think we might see you back, and what promotion do you think you'll be in next?
You know what I'm really excited about? And I was fucking stoked. I got my debut was right away in Bellator. I got 5 fights with Bellator. I was happy. I fought in the Forum 3 times. Forum is it's a big venue. A lot of people. I loved it. I think right now what interests me would be more of like that Ultimate Fighter format. It's
Ooh,
making it
I like it.
right. I can cause a lot of havoc in a room in a house full of other fighters too.
Mm-hmm.
If they have the
Dude, that would have
145
been
pound
awesome.
division, yeah. If they have a 145-pound division and Nick or Nate is the coach, even like Jake Shields being the coach, I would fucking eat it up. Think about the
who?
ratings we would get.
Yeah, especially with Nate as a coach too. Who would you like to see Nate coach against in that hypothetical season?
Connor, hands down. Connor or Masvidal.
Dude, that would be the ratings would be sky high for that one.
Yeah, I would cause so much havoc. I'd be a little shit starter because I think that's what's cool about that. I mean, the Ultimate Fighter back in the day, like I loved watching that, and now that I see it's making a comeback, I'm like, hey, Bellator's great, and I had an injury, and that's why they had to, it wasn't even that. We just didn't continue the contract, and it couldn't continue the contract because I had an injury, and I'm not going to fight. I haven't fought since August, so they knew clear up space on the roster if I need to, if I want to. But right now, I think just seeing the Ultimate Fighter come back, that's where my eyes are. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
dope. That's you're part of history when you're on the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, and Nate definitely had some good moments on the Ultimate Fighter too.
The
Like
winner,
just yeah, he was definitely like that was a great season too. I think he had Gray Maynard, and then I
right?
can't really name off anybody else too much, but yeah, Nate looked great in that season, and I'm sure you would too.
Remember when Rampage ripped the door off the hinges?
Dude, that's my favorite episode, man. That it was so good.
I
Or
think
when
how
he
many
called.
people have made that into like an online meme outside of the fighting. I think one of the funniest things is I was in college and I saw like me walking to class on a Monday, fucking ripping the door off.
Man, that just shows how
Wanderlei and Chael, like iconic
I can't
moment.
let you get close. Let you get close.
Yeah, small confined environments with a room full of fighters. It's designed for entertainment.
And I think it
So
worked
that
well with
interests me.
COVID
Other
too.
than that, it's more about like grappling and jiu-jitsu right now. I think IBJJF is doing everything they can to get these opens and these events back in the works. Before the lockdown, I was registered for the IBJJF Hands, which that's an awesome event. I mean, I enjoy, like, people go and they do fun things on the weekend. If there's an open tournament and I could do it, that's fun to me. Like, I enjoy doing that. Grappling wise, even, like, I think the history with Askren, I give Askren a hard time because he originally was set to have a bout with me for Polaris, and he backed out of it. So there was always kind of that bad blood, and that's when it was that match that I actually got the Shields match. So before Shields, it was supposed to be me versus Askren for Polaris.
Wow,
and,
I didn't know that.
Right? Nobody knows that. He backed out. Polaris will tell you. He backed out, and then in came Shields. But it was one of those things because I came from a wrestling background, and I'm like, well, everybody was perceiving Askren as being like, the wrestler of the time. I'm like, I'll submit that guy quicker than he could say wrestling. And I feel like that, we don't really see that clash in styles anymore. A lot of jiu-jitsu is all about these leg entanglement butt grapplers, and they're trying to make I had my hand in that, and that was to make a way for people to have a living in jiu-jitsu, which it's cool, but I wish more black belts would be held accountable for their style of jiu-jitsu by fighting. And I think that's one of the reasons why I like fighting, is because it holds the martial arts accountable. It checks the techniques. Those techniques are great, but will it actually work in a real fight? So, the jiu-jitsu is always on the table. ADCC, obviously, aside from the IBJJF, that's one of the other things that is always on my radar. I passed it up in 2019, so it's 17. I had a good showing in Finland, and then 19 I had the invite for the ADCC in Los Angeles, but it was the same weekend as the Bellator fight that I had against. It was actually against a Mexican. It was against Jonathan Quiros, right? I had the fight with him, and I chose, instead of the ADCC invite, I chose to do the MMA bout because for me it was about what that represented, and I think that more top level jiu-jitsu guys and black belts should take fighting seriously to the point where they shouldn't be afraid to step in the ring. And I think even, like, I would say that to Jake. I'm like, listen, just because you got your ass handed to in MMA doesn't mean you shouldn't go, you shouldn't try your hand in MMA. Boxing's cool, but don't try to pose as a boxer when you're not a boxer. You're not fighting NBA stars, and fighting washed up wrestlers is not gonna, you're not gonna legitimize you as a boxer. You want to be a boxer? Oh, you want to get, you want to pad up your record and do the old fashioned approach. At the end of the day, you got to lay your head on the pillow, and you got to be the one to come to terms with who you are. And I think that, the more he hides from the truth, the worse it's going to get for him. But listen, I would be shocked if Askren won this fight. But stranger things have happened, right? He's crafty.
Yeah,
I got to give it to Askren. He's crafty. He has strategy. But in terms of boxing, like, you got, like, there's a rhythm to it. There's a cadence to it. It's all striking. And he's got, not only does he have pillows for hands, he doesn't have his muscle memory for striking is not like it'll be exhausted if he throws 2 sets. Right? And then what? Then he's going to get pieced up, right? That's why in boxing it's pop, 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 reset, exchange, pop, 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 and that's always moving. He can't keep up that cadence. I bet Jay can, because he's younger and he has some agility, has some athleticism, and he spent time in quality boxing gyms under the supervision of boxing oriented, like I said, 6 months in a boxing gym, focused training in a boxing gym. You can develop the attributes of a boxer. But now, can he do that against someone that's not an NBA star or not a washed-up wrestler? I don't know. I think maybe he's just buying time right now and creating hype, and that's his rhyme or reason. But do it against a guy that's 40 pounds less than you and much shorter.
Gotcha, man. I'm just disappointed that Ben Askren can't do like a spinning back fist in the ring. That's all I'm disappointed about.
Yeah, right. It's a freak show.
Gotcha,
Yeah,
man.
Askren's gonna have fun with it, and I think that in itself it would be kind of cool to watch just how he navigates around the kid taking himself way too seriously. He's doing the most. But
Mm-hmm.
Askren knows it has no significance whatsoever.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's all the questions I had. I just want to thank you again for the time, AJ. Is there anything that you want to say to the fans out there watching?
This this is the one, Chris. I appreciate the time.